Yeah, you forgot about the barbecue sauce. What state are we in? They get the credit. My opinion, Innova turned frisbee golf into disc golf. And so when I threw that shot, as soon as it left my hand, I knew I made it. And I turned around, and the first thing I see is everybody's got their cell phones. One of my shots is now part of our sports history.
Hey everyone, it's Greg from Six Sided Discs, and welcome to All Six Sides, a new series where we explore the world of disc golf from every angle. We're kicking off today with world traveler, YouTuber, author, teacher, and of course, disc golfer, Scott Stokely. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Of course.
For our viewers, if somehow they don't already know, Scott is one of the most active entrepreneurs in disc golf, from coaching clinics and seminars to online courses, YouTube tutorials, the Stokely Universe apparel and designs, Stokely go-kart and collaborations or sponsorships with Gotta Go, Gotta Throw, Birdie, Castaplast. You're out there hustling a lot in the world of disc golf, Scott.
Yeah, you forgot about the barbecue sauce. The Stokely line of barbecue sauce that was just discontinued.
Oh, tell me more about the barbecue sauce.
Oh, I can describe the barbecue sauce, excuse me, in two sentences. Sentence number one was when I called my girlfriend and I said, just a heads up, I just bought $20,000 worth of barbecue sauce. Sentence number two is, would you be interested in $19,000 worth of barbecue sauce?
Yeah, what do you do with that amount of barbecue sauce? That's great.
We just discontinued it and threw it out. It has a shelf life. Not my wisest business investment. Hey, the way I look at it is that I've had a lot of incredibly successful business ventures, at least, by my scale. And they only happen because of a willingness to pull the trigger and try stuff. And so some stuff works, some stuff doesn't. No big deal. It's life. It's business.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I think we've had stuff that's worked for our business, and we've definitely had stuff that didn't. So, you learn from those mistakes, hopefully.
Yeah, well, you can't predict the future. You can only try stuff, and then you have to have the guts to pull the trigger on something and push your chips into the pot. And sometimes someone, it's just life. It's not a thing. It's you win some, you lose some.
Scott, I didn't tell you anything about this kind of leading up to the interview, but I spent the last week or so listening to your audiobook. And if somebody hasn't somehow already listened to it or read your book, Growing Up Disc Golf, it's an incredible kind of unfiltered story about your life in the early days of the sport. And I'd love to ask a few questions about that. We'll get to that in just a minute. But over the past year, you've been traveling the world. Where are you right now on your travels?
We are in, what state are we in? No, I'm here in Madison doing, I did a seminar yesterday. I had a clinic Sunday afternoon. I was in Milwaukee Sunday morning. I was in Cary, Illinois, Saturday afternoon, Joliet, Illinois, Saturday morning. Before that, Columbus, Cincinnati, Aurora. We're in Minnesota next weekend. And this is just what we do. We're always on the go.
Nice. And you're traveling, you got like a nice van set up to cruise around, or?
Oh, we do hotels. When we're in the U.S., we stay at basically 365 hotels a year. We've stayed with four different friends for a day or two in the last 3 years traveling the U.S. So we actually like the hotel thing.
After you competed in almost every Disc Golf Pro Tour event in 2022, you skipped the Pro Tour to travel and play events all over the world in 2023, visiting Southeast Asia, the UK, Sweden, Norway, Finland, among many others. Looking back on your 6 wins, 3 podiums, and 2 top 10s, what stands out as the most memorable event this year?
I think, there's a couple. I mean, the most memorable experience was Cambodia, just because it was so unique. I mean, that's why we're in Southeast Asia. It was, we were playing, there were rice paddies that were marked out of bounds. There was water buffalo on the course. I mean, on the holes. I mean, you had to avoid water buffalo. That was probably the most unique. But in terms of golfing, it was probably Croatia because it was the first tournament of the Euro Tour. And Paul Macbeth was there, and I shot 10-4, I believe 10-43 rated for the tournament. I missed like one putt in 3 rounds. I had 2 bogeys in 3 rounds on a course that would just murder people. I mean, it was so hard. And I just played.
Was that Kona Peace Day?
No, it was the Pro Forester. I don't remember the name of the park. But
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the Czech Republic.
That's the Czech Republic. Yeah, that course was too long for me. I had a hard time
Yeah.
there. No, but it was great because I made it onto the lead card and I was on coverage and I was shooting against Paul, and like Paul played great, and I was like 2 strokes around behind him. But 2 strokes behind Paul Macbeth when Paul's game is on is like mind blowing to me. I was tied for second with 3 holes to go. Fed finished third, and I was so proud because it was the first tournament over on the Euro Tour, and it's like I still got it on a given weekend. Overall, I shot 10-28 for my 6 events on the Euro Tour, which was, there was only, I believe, one European player that went to a bunch of those events that had a higher rating at those tournaments. And it sounds weird because I mean, I'm overloaded with confidence when I'm at these tournaments, but at the same time, there's that part of me that thinks, well, what the hell are you doing out here? Like, you're too old and you don't have it anymore. And like, it's nice to know, wow, yeah, man, I still got it, at least, at moments. So that it meant a lot to me.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's really interesting to hear about these events, further away. And I know maybe some people aren't following the Euro Tour or some of these other events quite as closely as like the North American section of the Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Yeah.
And for those that didn't follow it super closely, who are some players that you came across either in Southeast Asia or across Europe that are going to be household names in the next few years?
Jakob Simrad, for sure. I would say Jakob. By the way, I'm going to mess up all these names. I met like 100 people. Jakob Kenepik from the Czech Republic. I'm so sorry for everybody. Like, I'm calling you out because I'm a fan, Jakob. Don't get mad at me because it's a blur. I think one of the most underrated golfers in the entire world is Silver Lott. Silver is absolutely fantastic, and it's just, he's one of those players that, like, he could just break out tomorrow. And nobody that knows him is surprised, but he's, would kind of come from nowhere. But Silver is amazing.
He has an incredible forehand.
Yeah, it's great. I would say Josef Berre from Sweden is top notch. God, if I could just go through a list of names, Nicolas, of course, is great, and God, if you'd asked me like I've been in like 19 countries since the Euro Tour ended. They're all good, and they're all good kids. I like every one of them. They're all my friends. They're all talented, and they're all 20 years old. I mean, like, it's really hard. It's like, it's sports, right? It's like, how do you tell who's going to be the top pro coming out of college in the NFL or the NBA? The answer is nobody has a clue. Nobody can guess. I don't care what they say in the ESPN, pay extra to read the article thing. They're just flipping coins and rolling dice. Like, they get it wrong as much as they get it right. So it's like, there's something that makes that top 20-year-old become the next level 24-year-old, but no one knows what that thing is. So any of these kids could step out, and none of them would surprise me.
Yeah, if you could predict him that easily, it'd be worth quite a bit of money to sign him up, right?
Dude, I would have taken Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning if you would have asked me. And no one wants to admit it, but about 50% of people out there would have taken Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning. It was like 50-50. No, nowadays, everyone's like, oh, I knew. It's like, bull BS. No, you didn't. We all thought Ryan Leaf was great.
Yeah, and only one of them's doing nationwide commercials at this point.
Yeah, so.
Possibly just as difficult to pronounce, depending on what stood out to you, but what were the best and worst things that you ate on those world travels?
Okay, the best thing that I ate was everything. The weirder, the better. And they were all from Japan, basically. We would do is we'd sit down at a restaurant, and if it was outside of town and nobody spoke English and there was no pictures on the menu, we would just take our phone and with Google Translate, and I would just type in English, please order 2 dinners for us, and I would translate to Japanese, and I would hand it to the person at the table next to us. They would just order whatever, or we'd ask the waitress, we would say, "What do you eat?" Not what do you recommend for us, because they would want to try to give us a cheeseburger because they think that's what we want, or they're going to be polite. It's like, no, I want to know what you eat. And so among the meals that we got, we ate raw horse, we ate raw horse liver,
Wow.
we ate raw whale, we ate raw chicken. That's a real thing,
Wow.
raw chicken. So that was all kind of weird. Stingray fin. I'll tell you, I mean, the food up in the Nordic countries was the pickled, like every type of pickled fish you can imagine. And I don't love it, but that's what I eat when I'm there, because like that's why we travel, right? So yeah, here, I got one for you. So we were in Cambodia, and the big thing for us when we go to other places, like other countries, it's like we want to go where there's no white people, basically. And no offense to all my white friends out there. I love you all. But we're not in Cambodia to see you. We're in Cambodia to spend time with Cambodians. And, that's everywhere we go, it's what we try to do. So we're in Cambodia. We hired a driver for the day because it's like $10 to have a driver all day to see Angkor. And at lunch, he spoke a little bit of English. He said, "Where do you want to eat lunch?" And we said, "Take us where you eat lunch." And we don't want to see white people. And so he's like, "Okay." So he takes us down this dirt road, past these houses, past these huts. I mean, we're out like in the jungle, the rainforest. We're out in this, in the Cambodian version of the sticks. And there's a house, and next to this house, there's 4 tables next to it, and that is a restaurant. So this woman owns a house, and she cooks for people that eat there. The 4 tables have behind each table there was 4 chairs, and then there's 4 hammocks. There's a hammock behind each table. You sit down, you eat, you take a nap. That's part of the process.
Nice.
When you're taking a nap, no one can sit at that table. You're blocking the table. And people are like, "Oh, it's a developing country." It's like, no, that sounds more developed than the U.S. They built in naps.
We only practice that once a year here on Thanksgiving. That's it.
Yes, they do it. That's part of the daily routine. Well, now, in all fairness, it's 95 degrees, 95% humidity, 95% of the time. So in the middle of the day, there's not a lot. People. Shops close during the day, like outdoor markets. They open in the morning, then they close, then they open at night because of the heat. So,
yeah,
not unusual. But anyways, we go there, and they have a whole menu full of things. One of them includes, there's a type of fish that every year the rice paddies dry up, but the fish eggs, I guess, remain, because when it rains and they fill in these rice paddies, fish like spring to life, and they eat these fish. But what was long story, but we asked, or she told our driver something, and he says, "Oh, great news, everybody. If you want, about an hour ago, there was a chicken running through their yard. Would you like the chicken?"
This is a random chicken?
Yes. A random chicken made the mistake of running through the front yard of a restaurant. And we're like, "Yes, of course we do." And then how do we put this? They prepared the chicken for us right there. They broke it into like 9 different sections: feet, legs, gizzards, neck, whatever. Everything was cooked differently. It came out of like 9 separate plates. It was this banquet that was just one chicken.
Wow.
And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. But it was cool because it's like I never eaten like that before. Like if you're a hunter or you're a farmer, especially if you're a farmer, that's life, right? That's the way life goes. But as a city person, that was foreign to me, and it was really unique.
That's really cool.
And then we took a nap.
Yeah, you got to. When in Rome, nap like the Romans.
I didn't want to be rude and not nap.
As many people know, you were competing in disc golf back in the early days of the sport What similarities or differences do you see in how disc golf is developing in some of these countries where it's still a much newer sport than how it was back in the US?
No, it's actually a great question because basically the way what we've noticed is that there's a process to the course going in. No one's ever heard of it. Someone gets it in the ground. They have to explain what it is to people. You go to a new city, they've never heard of it. You have to explain the sport. There's the community is pushing back. No one wants to sponsor it. It's just the human condition doesn't really change from country to country. So what we've noticed is that in the U.S. and in Finland and Sweden, Norway, etc., disc golf it's 2023. Everywhere else in the world, disc golf is on the same timeline it was it's somewhere on that timeline that we were in the U.S. Like when we go to Australia and New Zealand, it's disc golf in the 90s in terms of how many people have heard of it, how much sponsors, prize money, players. Some tournaments fill, some tournaments don't. They're right about like in the 90s. In Cambodia, it's the mid 70s. They got one course, and it's the 80s in Malaysia. So everyone's following a very similar path. Probably the biggest difference is that there's now precedent which will accelerate the process. I mean, you can go to the government and you can say, look at what this has done for the economics of this town, 1,000 different places. And so there's a little bit of precedent to show that, no, the course didn't go to hell, or the park didn't go to hell. No, it didn't bring in a seedy element. No, it didn't, it didn't make things worse. So that part's nice, but that just accelerates the process. It doesn't change the process.
How much do you think entities like the Paul Macbeth Foundation are helping to accelerate that when they're going into a country and trying to introduce people to the sport for the first time, putting in a course? Is that maybe speeding up that trajectory at all, or is it still going to kind of follow a lot of that same cycle?
No, everything helps. I mean, the cycle is going to be similar as anywhere else. I mean, it's new. I mean, there's a normal human pushback to things that are new. Small percentage embrace new, a larger percentage don't. But everything Paul Macbeth Foundation does is great. Everything everybody does is great. Everybody's having a piece in this thing. My biggest passion right now is growing disc golf in developing countries. I have a project I'm trying to work on in Africa, one in the Philippines. I've been donating my money this whole year to all the different my prize money to different organizations. I actually donated I donate my prize money to tournaments. I give them every tournament. I give the name of an organization. My prize money goes to that organization. So I gave like $600 to the Paul Macbeth Foundation from PCS, and won $2,000 at the Holland Open, and that went to Disc Golf Philippines, for example. My Croatian money went to Disc Golf Ukraine. So not only a developing country, but it's disc golf related.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is contributing to that, but many, many people are all playing their little parts in growing disc golf around the world. But it certainly helps. I mean, first off, look at money. Money fixes almost everything. And in a developing country where the average income might be $5 to $10 a day, the amount of money that it would take to move something here in the U.S., it takes 10% that much money to move it in Kenya or, Malaysia. So
Yeah.
You can actually accomplish a lot more in these countries.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much. And it's great to hear about how you're kind of contributing to that growth. What is it about disc golf that has such a sort of universal attraction to people within the community that want to grow it and share that with other people? I don't think I can recall a community that does that quite like disc golf does.
No, I think it's just, there's there's good and bad things about us monkeys, right? We're just monkeys on a rock, right? And we have our pros and cons as a species, and but one of the pros is I think we humans generally want to see other people happy. That is a normal thing. Now, how much you're willing to give or sacrifice to do that varies person to person. But most people, if they could switch, would make that happen. And so I think it's just a matter of sharing the happiness. It's just being a part of this thing that we want to share. and I'm not sure that it wouldn't be that way in other areas as well, but it's like, how do you share the love of this thing over here? Well, it might seem daunting. How do you share the love of baseball in another country? Well, like, what are you going to do? Go, take your $6 million to introduce the sports and create I mean, like, that's not the same thing as I could just put a course in the ground, or I could just show up with a basket.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that's what good question I never thought of, but maybe it's something that we get to share the love of what we do in a much more obtainable way. We can just call the school and say, hey, I want to teach disc golf to the kids. And they go, well, how about Tuesday during lunch? And you're like, I'll be there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a little easier for us. But, there's also something to it. That's not entirely true. We are a different breed. There's something about a correlation between grown-up adults that choose to spend their time playing with toys in a park.
Yeah.
It's going to bring a different. There's the correlation to the type of people that do that will be different than other types of people. I'm not suggesting better or worse, and by that I mean better, but different. And so I think that's also the personality. We're children to some extent, so maybe that's just part of that. It's a great question. I never really thought about what make. Yeah, it's a fan. I don't get a lot of new questions. That's nice.
Clearly, part of your approach to growing the sport, whether you're traveling, domestically or internationally, is to be teaching these seminars and clinics. So, for anybody that's not familiar, what is the Scott Stokely method?
So, the Scott Stokely disc golf method, right off the bat, I hate the name of it because I feel like I'm talking about myself in the third person, which I can't stand. Except from a marketing perspective, if I was consulting you, I would tell you to do the same thing, right? It is the correct way to market it. This is the Stokely disc golf method is not a different method of playing the game. It's not a different method of throwing. Every teacher and pro in the sport, probably 98%, we agree on the right and the wrong way to throw. The method I developed is a method of teaching the game that is different than anyone else in the world that teaches it. And I mean, it's radically different. It's a different process of getting there. Most people, most teaching, tutorials teaching, they teach the end result. Here's what the throw is going to look like. Do this. And in my experience, that doesn't work, or at the very least, doesn't work for most people. So what I've developed, because I've taught more disc golf than anyone in the world. I wrote the first book on how to disc golf, the first instructional DVDs on how to disc golf. I did 1,200 private lessons in 2 years. God, I'm up to about 600 clinics now in 600 cities. Like I've taught the most, and what I've learned is which different things you teach and which different things you allow to happen as a result of doing the things that you taught. So the basic idea is this. If I asked you to make a list, for example, of everything that you do when you throw a backhand based on all the YouTube tutorial videos out there, at a minimum, you could come up with at least 30. 30 different things you have to do on your backhand. And each of these 30 things, bracing here, power pocket there, planting, rotating, dipping, pulling, head move, blah, 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 blah. There's an entire video or multiple videos from different people on all 30 of those different things. Okay, you cannot do 30 things in 1.5 seconds. It's not possible. Nobody can. Yet all 30 of those things happen for this throw to have been successful. But you can't do them, right? That's a bit of a challenge. Well, what I figured out through many, many years and in part by being very shallow, this is all I do, is that there's actually a very small number of things that you do on the throw. And if you do these things, all those other things will happen as a byproduct of doing those things. So if you accomplish these, the rest of it just happens. And that is the core of what the method is about, partially. The second part is that it is impossible to watch a professional disc golfer throw a golf disc, mimic their mechanics, and have that work for you.
Yeah.
Not because they're better at disc golf than you, but because they have a different body than you do. Okay? Every single person playing is a different size, a different shape, a different amount of muscle mass in different areas. We have different flexibility. Our joints align at different angles. And within those different angled joints, we have a different range of motion from person to person. Then you add in injuries, scar tissue. You cannot mimic another player's mechanics and timing and have it work for you because they are throwing with a different machine than you're throwing.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can't just throw any way you want to or do whatever feels good. Physics trumps everything. So it's a combination of those two things. You must do certain things. You can't throw any way you want to. But if you do those certain things, those small number of things, your body must be allowed to move differently, and your timing must be allowed to be different from person to person because you're throwing with a different machine than them. So yeah, what I've developed, I make it very simple when I teach it, but there's a lot of complexities behind the scenes that I've developed that actually make this process work. I have a 6-month online course called Become a Complete Disc Golfer at scottstokely.net. It's not just a bunch of videos and drills. That doesn't follow this method of teaching. Throughout the 6 months, you are uploading an unlimited number of form review videos that are going to get professionally reviewed and make those corrections, because there has to be a dance between you and the instructor where you do things, they see things. They're the experts. I got 3 trainers working for me who are experts at getting your body to move the way your body is supposed to move to accomplish these techniques. There can't be a one-size-fit-all. Here's what you do. There can't. Different bodies. So anyways, long answer. But that's what the method is, and that's how I teach it. I also do clinics and seminars in person at scottstokely.net. You can see my upcoming calendar of events as well.
Throughout all these clinics and seminars, then, what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that players are making when they're, maybe overanalyzing their form, or maybe they haven't thought about it at all?
So the biggest mistakes players make is they don't know which things to focus on, because, like I said, there's 30 different things that you're supposed to do, but you don't do all of those things, right? I'll give you one example. Suppose you want to throw up. Let's say 20 degrees up. All right. Okay. You already got to do all the different things on your backhand throw to begin with to make the throw work. Okay. Well, what I'm going to tell you is that when you turn your arm at 20 degrees, your forearm, that's the only thing in part of your body you're going to move. You're going to pull 20 degrees up. You're going to pull 20 degrees down. You're going to pull 20 degrees up. But you've made just one change. Okay. Do that throw. Watch a video of yourself. What you'll notice on that video is that your weight was more on your back leg bent more, you leaned over at the hips, and your weight transferred differently. All 4 of those things happened in addition to doing this. What the Stokely method says is, if you want to throw over a tree and you try to add 5 different elements, because the video showed you doing 5 different things, the tutorial video that you saw, the slow motion video, could point to 5 different things that you did. I would argue that if you tried to add 5 different things in 0.2 of a second to your throw, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Add 5 things to all the things you're already doing. Give me a break. No one in the world can do that. What I'm saying is, if you tilt your arm and just do this one thing, the throw will work. And then when you watch the video, you're like, wow, I actually did 5 different things. Didn't even know it. So yeah, you got to do those 5 different things, or those 5 different things have to happen. I'm saying you only have to do one. The biggest mistake a new player would make is, number 1, not knowing which of these things to do, or maybe doing 2 or 3, or maybe trying to do all 5. Give me a break. Can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, how would you know which one thing to do unless someone's telling you? And how do you know who to believe? Because everyone's telling you something different. It's tough, man. It's tough. I know what I'm teaching is right. I don't expect anyone to know that I'm right, because there's very intelligent, well-spoken, articulate people making quality videos out there that are getting it wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, so you just have to, take your chances with me. I promise it's right. But,
It reminds me of how many, and I don't know, I wonder if you or anyone else has experienced this, but as somebody who watches a lot of disc golf YouTube, I'm constantly getting ads for ball golf. which I personally find annoying, and I'm constantly trying to tell the YouTube algorithm that they're not the same thing.
Right.
But they're always ads about, form and, oh, you need this new tool that's going to fix everything. And it definitely feels like this sort of exact same thing, but in the world of disc golf, where there's 100 teachers teaching 100 different things, but they're all, it's this one thing that has to change to make it just right. And so many of them contradict each other as well. It can't possibly be the same.
Well, but here's the thing. So I wrote the first book on how to disc golf in 2000. You want to know why you can't find that book on Amazon? And by the way, let me point out, when I wrote that book in 2000, I probably was the most knowledgeable disc golf teacher in the sport in 2000. I knew more than anybody at this point. I had done more than 200 clinics, had been playing for 30 years at this point. You know why you can't find that book right now on Amazon? Because I'd be making money off it if it was up there. It's because there were so many things in that book that I got wrong that I can't even edit the book to make the book right. I would have to rewrite the book from scratch. I didn't go through it and say, oh, I need to change that one thing and that one thing. I was like, nope, that's wrong, that's wrong. And not necessarily wrong, but I explained that poorly. I didn't teach it right. Oh, I pointed out to the wrong thing there. So I am not knocking the people making these videos. They're just inexperienced. And I think it's great that they're making them and they're trying to teach, because we need people teaching. We need innovators. And a lot of them are going to be great teachers someday. YouTube just allows you to put content out before you're at that point. That's all, right? But I'm not knocking the people making them. I think it's great that they're trying. The one thing I would say, though, is that, and this is what I tell all the disc golf teachers out there, is that I would love to have a conversation with you about disc golf teaching. Teach 500 private lessons first.
Yeah.
Because until you've done private lessons, you don't know that what you're teaching works or doesn't work. I'm not saying you're not right or wrong. You could look at that form review and say, look, I'm right. I can prove it to you. And I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Being right doesn't mean it works. It working is a different thing. That thing that was right, when you stand in front of a person, or rather 500 people, and you say the exact same things that you were right about, if those 500 people, or a majority of them, can't do the thing you just told them to do, the fact that you're right means nothing. You don't know how to teach yet. And again, I didn't know how to teach either when I was, for 20 years. In my opinion, when I look back now, I'm like, it took me a long time. So, please don't misunderstand anybody. I'm not arrogantly thinking that I'm smarter or better than these people. I'm older. I've just been doing it longer. I think they're going to be great teachers. And hopefully the way it's going to work is they're going to become better teachers than me someday. That also should happen. Everything should evolve. So they should pass me by at some point. So,
yeah,
just because they haven't today doesn't mean they won't someday. But right now, this method's the best.
Yeah, I think it's in the younger generation's nature to think they know better than us. I tell my son, hey, that doesn't work. It's not going to work. And he knows, he thinks it will. He's wrong.
We all do. But I commend them for trying. Look, I say this, and I've said this till I'm blue in the face. People are like, should I do an online class with you, or should I go get an in-person lesson? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Go get if there's a person, look, if there's someone in your town teaching lessons right now, go get one. They know more than you. You will learn from them. Is it as good, better, or worse than somebody else who's better or worse? Who knows where they fit in, but they're better than you.
Yeah.
Go take a lesson from a local player. Go to discgolflessons.com. It's a website. I built a website called discgolflessons.com where any teacher can advertise himself on it. So I fully support other teachers out there and want to send them business. I'm not trying to this isn't like some egotistical, capitalistic, narcissistic merging of greed that what I say I'm the best. What I'm saying is there's great teachers everywhere. Sorry, it's kind of a rant, but
no worries.
I don't want people to not like me thinking I'm knocking other people. I'm absolutely not. I'm just saying I've been doing it longer. That's all.
We'll include that link along with all the other links we talk about today in the link in the video description. So everybody get down there and check those out.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I want to go back to the early years, the early days. You talk about in your book a ton of great stories. Again, can't recommend the book highly enough. But you grew up in Southern California in the 1970s, just 300 yards away from Oak Grove, the first disc golf course in the world. What was that like?
Upside down Oak Grove. Well, so I first played when I was 7 years old and didn't realize it was special.
Yeah.
It was just a park with a thing. I did not realize that this was the only frisbee golf course in the entire world, or that it would be a historic place. Like, it was just, so you go to the park with the merry-go-round or the park with the frisbee golf course, flip a
Yeah.
coin. I was 7. But when I was 11, I moved right down the street, about 300 yards away. And I moved from basically a middle-class area where I had friends and I fit in just fine into this very rich, at the time, very elitist community. I went to the high school where the kids got a Porsche for their 16th birthday, and I mean, I'll never forget the story. When I was at school one day, and I heard this one girl complaining to her friends. I'll never forget this. She was so pissed off that her dad bought her a brand new Volkswagen Rabbit for her 16th birthday, because that's not the car she wanted, and she was furious. And all of her friends were like, "Your dad's an asshole," right? Excuse me. I went to that school.
Wow.
Except I wasn't the rich kid. I was the poor kid at the school. Even though we were comfortably middle class, in my mind, I was abject poverty. So I didn't fit in. Right across the tracks, which was actually Berkshire Road, but it was effectively the tracks. Right on the other side of the tracks was Oak Grove Park, which is basically blue collar, working class. It was more like my people. And my dad died when I was 7, and I basically was adopted by all the men in the park. This is back at a time when it was okay for a grown man to mentor a young boy and, take him under his wing and, take him to tournaments, and no one thought it was weird. It's the 70s. It was just like, "Hey, there's a kid that likes to play. You want to come to the tournament next weekend? Sure, I'll call you." And they'd call my mom. My mom would say, "Yeah, It's the way it was in the 70s. We used to trick or treat in the 70s to strangers' houses. And then oh my God, we used to ride our bikes out of sight of our front yard. Unbelievable. But anyways, so yeah, I basically was adopted by the men at Oak Grove Park, and then it wasn't all men, but mostly. And it was everything. My entire world revolved around the park. I got out of school, I went to the park. Stayed there till dark. Saturday morning, I woke up, went to the park until dark, and then came home. When I was a little bit older, I ditched school every single day. I had a bag of discs in my locker at school. My mom would drop me off at school. I'd take my books, put them in the locker, take my discs out, play disc golf all day. At 3 o'clock, I'd go back to school, put my discs in my locker, grab my books, go home, eat, grab my other golf bag, go to the park and play. That's all I did for years. Until I dropped out of school when I was 15, so then I didn't have to lie about it. I could just go. So yeah, it was everything to me back then.
Having seen disc golf in its infancy up close there at Oak Grove, with some of the first players playing, what's one thing that was better back then versus today?
Okay, that is so simple. If you named 20 different things about the sport, just 20 categories, money, recognition, course length, whatever, doesn't matter what it is, 19 of the 20 things are better now than they've ever been. Like, I'm sorry, the dumbest question anybody ever asks, and by the way, you're supposed to say that there are no dumb questions. No, this one's dumb. I'm sorry. People ask me, I didn't say the people asking the question are dumb. I said the question's dumb. They go, "What can we do to fix disc golf?" I get that question all the time, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you're out of your mind. Like, if you think that the sport isn't crushing right now, like, it is better than it has ever been in nearly every measurable way. Whether it be recognition, whether it's people making money on tour, how good the courses are, how many courses there are, buying discs in stores, not out of the trunk of someone's car. The travel, the teaching, the business opportunities, so many people making living in the sport. Like it's better in every way. I mean, people when they say that, usually what they mean, they're like, well, they're not winning millions of dollars on the pro tour. It's like, I get it, right? Sure. I think it would be great if the, 100 people were making more money. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But that means nothing to the other 15 million recreational disc golfers out there that enjoy and love the game, right? So there's nothing wrong with the sport. The sport's killing it in every way, except for one. There's one thing that we lost that we'll never get back, and that is the tight knit community and camaraderie that the old school disc golf or frisbee community had. And I know there's a community today. So I know everybody knows that you can go to any course and post to Facebook. People will come out. We still have a fantastic community. It was better before, right? It was so tight.
Yeah.
It was real family. It was back in those days, everybody that played for the most part was a misfit in some form. Nobody understood what we did or why we did it except each other. And because of that, we were all outcasts except when we were at a frisbee tournament. I say frisbee because there was an overlap between frisbee sports and disc golf or frisbee golf for a long time. So it's the frisbee family.
Yeah.
But there was an overlap between those things because, like none of us could tell our boss why we needed a day off. Because if we told them why, the boss would say, no, you're not taking a day off for what? No, of course not. Like spouses didn't understand usually. Sorry if you're the 3 exceptions. The rest of the spouses didn't understand. So that was something that we all shared that made us, it was like, it was us against them in a very friendly way because, our, backs were up against it, but we were standing back to back, right? Taking on the world. So,
yeah.
That was different, and that'll never be, and that's just the nature of the fact that it's bigger now. It'll never be like that again, but it's still good now, but that part was better.
As I mentioned earlier, we're based here in Central Ohio, and before your clinic last year, you had some really kind words to say about Brent Hambrick. You also talk about him a little bit in your book. Tell me a little bit about Brent for those of our viewers that know us here in Central Ohio. What did he mean to the disc golf community?
Yeah. Brent got a whole chapter in my book, I think. Brent had, before I knew him, he had, I believe it was Hodgkin's. He went through treatment. He went through remission for many years. And Brent was an avid disc golfer. He got to be pretty good. He was never top level, but he was a solid player. But he was at the front line of promotion. There was a time when the Columbus Open was the greatest tournament in the sport. I mean, the World Championships had more prestige. Laurel Springs might have been a more beautiful location. The Masters Cup was historic, but as far as professional tournaments, Brent was the innovator who was ahead of everything. Brent was born at the wrong time because had Brent been around 20 years later, he would have created the Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Brent would have been the person that did that. So Brent was driving our sport forward, showing what was possible in the sport. Before there was the internet, he had a leaderboard at Tournament Central, a big giant leaderboard that he kept updated. So when you finished hole 18, because shotgun start, you start all over the course. When you finished hole 18, you could see the standings as you passed from hole 18 to hole 1. It was only one chance to see them because he only passed there once. So you didn't get the updates throughout the entire round. But you have to just go back in time and imagine nobody knew anybody else's score on the course until the end of the round. And only then, that was after the scores were checked, and 30 minutes later, the cards were put up, right? Yeah. So the idea of an alert where you were standing was freaking revolutionary. Brent made a video of the final 9 holes. So the top 3 people played the final 9 holes. He videoed it and then released the video. Like, boy, does that sound like nothing now, but back then, nobody did it.
Yeah.
By the way, on the video, he attached the camera to a remote controlled plane and flew it over the course. So he did drone footage effectively of the course. So, we're on hole 5, and then he'd show aerial footage of flying down hole 5.
Wow.
Like the amount of things he did, he got more sponsorship money than any other tournament in the sport. He raised $5,000 in sponsorship money, which is an obscene amount of money back then. Like he was everything, and he did it just because he loved the game and he wanted us to just keep moving forward. And so then we lost him early, and it was like, really, like you took away the best of us, like. Had Brent would have been a multimillionaire had he been born 20 years later, running the sport in the future. He would be the person who was negotiating with CBS to put us on TV 5 years ago, back before we realized we don't need network TV. But he would have been the guy that would have got us on it. Yeah, Brent. I love Brent. And so when I heard Brent was they finally realized that he was done with treatment. That he had a few weeks left. I actually came to Columbus and visited him. Probably spent I don't remember, half an hour with him or something. He didn't have a lot of energy. And it was honestly one of the most surreal experiences. If you've ever done this, it's very bizarre to walk to actually say goodbye to somebody.
Yeah.
And then you walk out the door and you're like, I need to go back in and see him again.
Yeah.
And then you just keep walking. I don't know. I mean, many people have been through it. I'm not saying it was worse for me than other people, but it sucked. It sucked as bad as anything in my life. And then losing him, the whole sport lost.
We've talked a little bit about the early days. I want to talk a little bit about the modern game. One of your contemporaries in the early days of disc golf was Sam Farrens. You mentioned him many times in your book. He won the 1984 World Championship at just age 16. And you say in your book, quote, "I can state with confidence that this will never happen again in our sport," end quote. This, of course...
No, I may be wrong.
Well, and I have a question to follow up on that. This was, of course, long before you got to see the likes of Gannon Buhr up close and personal. So how much do you agree with that quote from your book now?
Okay, in my book, I said I could state with confidence that no one will ever win the World Championships at 16 years old. Now I will state that nobody will ever win the World Championships at 16 years old, but I won't do it with confidence.
Right, the confidence is waning.
If you ask me to bet if someone 16 years old or younger will win the World Championships in the next 25 years, I would say the odds are still very likely that does not happen.
Yeah.
But it could. But it probably won't. I think Boris Becker won Wimbledon at 16. I mean, stuff happens.
Sure.
But yeah, that was wow, how the hell did I remember that? Oh my God, I'm not even a tennis fan. Anyways, I have no idea where that came from. But so I'm probably wrong. Maybe it was 18. But yeah, no. I mean, Gannon's great, but the best player in the world now goes into the World Championships at 12-1 underdog. Because the field is so deep and there's so many players so close that you're still not likely to win. Even though you're the best player. So
another sort of story that connects the old days to the modern game. You also mentioned in your book that you were at Oak Grove when the founders of Innova, Dave Dunapace, Harold Duvall, and Tim Selensky showed you Innova's very first disc, the Eagle, at what you describe as the moment frisbee golf became disc golf. What is it about the Eagle at that time that changed the game so dramatically?
Yeah, and so it was also Charlie Duvall. He was the fourth. I think he was a silent partner. I don't know the inner workings, but there were four people. Charlie was one of them. No, so the reason it revolutionized the game was that the biggest thing by far is simply that it flew farther. It's like you went from being a recreational player to feeling like an athlete, because now you could actually throw this thing in a way where people would be like, whoa. Like if you could throw a frisbee, 200 feet, like that's not a bad throw. It's a pretty good chuck.
Yeah.
But nobody is like pressed in the park. But well, if that same throw now flies 300 feet, back then, before there were golf discs, like nothing flew 300 feet in aerobie, right? Or no, Skyro back then.
Right.
But like, if you went out to a park and threw something 300 feet, people would just stop and gasp. So it just changed everything. It was a paradigm shift. It was that once this new company came out, and by the way, there were other companies out there. There was Discraft existed, the first Dynamic slash or Destiny discs, not the later Dynamic discs existed. Whammo had golf weight discs. There was Brand X. There was AMF Voigt. There was oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on the other one. Oh my God, Wall. God, I'm losing my mind. I remembered Boris Becker, and I can't remember Ben Wall. Thank you. It's Ben Wall discs. Anyways, so there were a company making discs, right? But none of them created the paradigm shift that happened, like when the Eagle came out. Because when the Eagle came out, it was the first like modern technology for disc golf that happened. Everybody threw 40% farther, and it was something that was different. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but just the world changed that day. And courses changed that day. All of a sudden, holes that were challenging became easy, or that long holes became short. Park space changed because, up until that point, if you wanted people to see this cool new game we were playing, frisbee golf, the only way it was going to get exposure is to put your course into a public park.
Yeah.
And in fact, the more people that use the park, kind of the better. Because the more people that would see the game and they would say, hey, what are you doing? Oh, that looks like fun. Oh, I got a frisbee in my garage. I'll come back next week, right? No one sold frisbees at the park. But that's fine, right? Yeah, people got hit with frisbees. Some of the holes were designed were playgrounds, were obstacles. I'm not kidding. There's courses where there'd be a tee pad, a basket, and right in the middle was a playground. The hole was designed that way because you needed an obstacle for the hole. And hey, here's a playground where kids play. Let's just throw over them. Like that was a hole. And guess what? You're throwing frisbees. Who cares? Someone gets hit in the head with a frisbee. Big deal. Yeah. Well, the moment they became a golf disc, that changed. All of a sudden, you're like, we probably ought to move this basket. Even another funny one was that in the early days, it was pretty common. And it made sense at the time to do this, but you'd have a tee pad, a basket. You would try to get the next tee pad as close to the basket as possible so people wouldn't have to walk.
Yeah.
And if someone gets hit, so what? Who cares, right? It's a frisbee. All of a sudden, you have a golf disc. You're like, oh, wow, yeah, we probably need to move that tee pad further away. So it changed the courses. It changed the sport. But it's just like, to me, it's like, it's the day we became disc golf. And there were some companies making non-frisbees, that's a Whammo trademark name, discs.
Yeah.
Like, for sure. But I still think we were still frisbee golf until Innova came out with the Eagle. And it's not for if you're new, it's not the modern Eagle that you throw. It was the original champion Eagle. They were champion Innova champion.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, look, I've been a Discraft guy for a long time, and I love Jim Kenner. I'm very loyal to Discraft and everything they did for me, But there's no questioning the fact that, like, there were many, many, many ways that Innova was absolutely the pioneer in the sport. They, like, to this day, every putter is basically an AVR.
Yeah.
Every mid-range disc is basically a rock. Every high-speed driver made is basically a destroyer.
Yeah.
Right? Innova, they led the way in all these different ways, and pushed the sport forward. So they get the credit. My opinion, Innova turned frisbee golf into disc golf. That's totally subjective, by the way, but that's my opinion. That's when we became disc golf, 1983.
Hey, and that's all we're asking for. I think your opinion is certainly one that I think a lot of people. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, and this is not really part of the interview, but I think you're sort of a connective tissue between where disc golf came from and where disc golf is now. And you talk about that lack of, exposure and awareness back then. So because it was such a kind of misfit thing, so many people didn't know about it. And I think I really enjoyed listening to your book because it was sort of unlocking this history that doesn't exist. And that's part of what gives, the NFL or baseball or any other sport this sort of, weight to it, is that you compare past generations to current generations. And that's so hard to do now with, everyone's talking about, oh, is Paul the best of all time or is Ken? There's not that many people that saw both of them play. There's not that many people that could even try and compare them now. If you were to try and find footage of Ken playing, you're not going to have anywhere near as much to compare. So it's great to get your perspective on, having seen it in both spaces, how much different or alike it really is these days versus then.
Well, and also, it's something I take very serious because I do agree. I am the biggest bridge between the original game, the old game, and the modern game. I was around for the old game, and I was sixth place on the Euro Tour in the modern game, right? I'm like, I've bridged this gap, but I take that responsibility like very serious. You know, I, you cannot forget where we came from. Like everything happening today. Well, first off, everything happening today has already been done. Okay, so like very little is being invented right
Right.
now.
Right.
And again, this is not like the old guys saying, "Oh, back in my day it was better." I'm telling you, 19 out of 20 things are better now than it's ever been. That's what's supposed to happen. The modern promoters and players have taken the game, put it on their shoulders, and run with it, and they're crushing. But that doesn't exist without all the work, the thankless hours, the hundreds of thousands of hours that were put in by the people in the early game. I mean, they invented the game. They pushed the game when nobody wanted it. You know, like people used to do like propose a disc golf course, and the neighbors would show up with torches and pitchforks, and sometimes one person would fight for years to get this course in, and that course is like now been in the ground for 37
Yeah.
years, and a million people have played it. But it was one person like fighting the mob. I mean, and the thing also is that the athletes back then were really good. The players were so good. They were so talented. It's like, are they better now? I mean, duh, obviously. Like that's the way it
Yeah.
works. You know, I mean, there's not a person today in the UFC. There's not a single UFC fighter today that couldn't go back and smoke anybody in UFC one.
Right.
The sport evolved. Like if that didn't happen, what does that say about the sport, right? So of course players are better, but it's like that doesn't mean the people in UFC one weren't the pioneers and amazing, right? And so the players back in the old days were great. I don't want anybody to forget that because it's not fair. It's we just
Yeah,
we didn't
exactly.
have YouTube and no one had cell phones. And only one of us could afford a video camera, but nobody had $3 for a blank cassette tape to film that day. Like
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like so, there's not the footage. There's not the record, and the record. A lot of it's up here. So that yeah, it's very important to me that people don't forget. One of the things that if anybody listening has seen this happen with me, you'll know this is true. You are not allowed to call me an OG. I will never be called an OG without me correcting you. Like, how could I be an OG when I had heroes that I look up to growing up in the sport? Like, I'm not an OG. I was there and I got to see the OGs. Like, I'm at best second generation. There was an entire generation before me, but that generation, which I call the first generation, came after the founders and the pioneers. I mean, people like Jim Kenner, Ken Westerfield, Victor Malafronte, the Berkeley Six, the Healy brothers, like they came before the first generations of players. So come on, like I'm not OG. I'm not even close. I take it serious. These are my people, and they were the best.
I want to ask sort of a follow-up question to that moment in time when the Eagle kind of revolutionized the sport overnight. Can you think of a moment since, or maybe even foresee a moment in the future where we might see that kind of huge leap forward in the sport. Looking at the new tools and things that people are coming out with, the tech disc, for example.
I mean, I would say no, but then you're always going to get proved wrong. The reason why I would say I don't see any leaps forward like that again is because there's technical standards we have to follow. A disc can only be so sharp, the rim can be only so deep, there can only be so much weight on the flight blade, it has to be so flexible. So I don't see any revolutions happening. Now, having said that, it does not mean that something can't, that I can't be wrong. I have a couple thoughts of some innovative ideas that, I have some ideas which I won't share. But they're just ideas. They're some ideas of stuff that's new. But no, and things like tech disc was great, and I worked for with a company called Game Prover, who's doing the same thing in Finland. I love the guy at Tech Disc. He's a cool guy making a great product. So I'm a huge fan of Tech Disc, and also Game Proofer. I'm a huge fan of Game Proofer. They're the ones that pay me, but but I'm always honest. I think they're both making great products. But yeah, there's always going to be those peripheral items, right? But that's not a technological leap as far as the game. Here's where the biggest jump's going to come, and I think it's probably the last great jump. I think that if you were to plot the MPO on a curve, that curve, as far as how much better people were getting, is really getting close to flattening. Like, I'm not saying there won't be people better than Paul and Ricky and Simon and Calvin,
right,
and Isaac. Someday, I think the game will evolve, but not much more. I mean, I just my opinion. When you see the curve start to flatten, why would it all of a sudden make another leap up? That's not the way numbers work. When you have we have millions of people playing. The law of large numbers kind of has some predictable patterns. So yeah, I think that we're getting pretty close on MPO. I don't think we're that close on FPO. I think FPO is still in this point right here. Like when you have someone like, say, Ella Hansen or Ezra, what's her first name? Ella Ezra, sorry. No, Ella Hansen. The girl that the girl that threw 500 something feet at the USDGC.
Is that
the 16-year-old? Her last name is Ezra.
I don't know her name. We'll look it up. We'll put it on the screen.
I'm just throwing. But when the point is that when you have FPO players who are stepping on a tee pad and throwing 500 feet, that means that there's no physical limitations to that happening, which means the sport will evolve to a point where every FPO player is throwing 500 feet, and the outliers are going to throw 6. And they're not going to, obviously, there's always going to be that gap, MPO and FPO physically. But if someone can throw 500 feet, they can all throw 500 feet. And that means that the entire field will be made up of FPO players that throw between 500 and 600 feet. That's going to be an entire tier level above where it is now. So as good as the FPO game is, I don't think that curve's flattened yet. I think it's still doing this. I think it's a rocket ship.
Yeah.
That's going to be pulling out the next generation of players, and it's going to be like, oh, that's amazing. And that's the thing about sports. It's like Elaine King was the best disc golfer in the universe. She could be the GOAT. And then Juliana came around, and it was Juliana at her best better than Elaine? Well, that's a debatable topic. Juliana threw farther, right? And then how does Juliana do compared to Val Jenkins and Des Redding? Well, did they move past? Well, probably, right? And then Katrina Allen came up, and then obviously Sarah Hokum threw sidearm better than everybody else, and then here comes Paige Pierce, and she's better than all of them. Skill wise, I mean, that's the evolution of the game, right? And then now Kristen is up there, and Kristen right now is playing better disc golf. Kristen is a better FPO disc golfer today at her level, not accomplishments and accolades and titles, but the way she's playing, no FPO player has ever played at her level before. That's not that's not a hot take, right? That's pretty much, we all know this, right? She's playing the highest level. I am saying there there are levels above her still that the sport will evolve to. Like, because once everybody's throwing once every FPO player is throwing 500 and some throw six, it's going to change everything. And that's a generation away. So, anyways, well, that was a bit of a rant. But as far as where I see the biggest leap happening between like the sport, let's say 10 or 20 years from now, that's going to be the biggest leap. I think the women's game, the FPO field they're crushing it, and but like I said, a rocket ship, that division.
Most players in disc golf these days, for the most part, tend to follow a pretty standard setup with their sponsors. They have a manufacturer sponsor, a retail, an apparel, and down the line, and maybe a few other little things. How many? I know you work with a ton of different companies. How many individual sponsors do you have?
Oh God, 10-ish. I don't know. I don't do anything like anybody else. Like it's like the kind of the holy grail of a sponsorship was to get a Tour Series disc, because then you make royalties off this disc.
Yeah.
And that's what not everybody that's sponsored, most people sponsored don't have a Tour Series disc. There's only so many discs, but getting a disc is like that's the holy grail. And so when I was going out on the Pro Tour, I was like, well, why would I have one when I can have 10? I'll just go to 10 different companies and get sponsored by 10 different companies.
Yeah.
And I'll get 10 different discs. And I went to each of those companies. I'm on they're all on my contact list on my phone. I know all the people involved, and I went to them, and it's like yeah, there's an argument to be made that if 10 different companies sponsored a person, then none of them get any value because they're all getting equal play.
Right.
And there's a reason why that's not a standard model, but I have a big enough following and where it was like, look, you have a chance to be in my bag. Like, getting a disc in my bag is good for you, and that disc will sell well. So yeah, I just went and talked to a bunch of companies, and they all said yes.
I just want to pick out one specific manufacturer in there, Birdie Disc Golf. Birdie's a smaller, newer company. They only make 3 discs at the moment, though I understand they have a few more on the way. I talked to them recently, and which of their discs do you throw, and what do you like about it?
Well, so I throw the Marvel, and the reason, I putt the Marvel. The reason why I putt it is that I was having 2 years ago, I was putting the Berg, which the Berg is my number one all-time favorite disc in the world, but it's not really a putter, and I probably shouldn't have been putting it. I'm not saying you shouldn't putt it or someone else shouldn't putt it, but I don't think I should have putted. And so in the middle of the season, I was the DGPT, I was just putting terribly. I just was having a hard time, and I said, I need to make a change. And I took 2 weeks and to try to work on my putting. And one of the things I did is I decided to switch putters. So I took 7 different molds and the Berg. So I had 8 different molds. And I just did about, correct me if I'm wrong, I did 20,000 putts. I did 20,000 total putts with those 8 discs. And my girlfriend sat on the back of a truck with a notepad for her phone, whatever, just counted all 20,000 makes and misses and in a spreadsheet. And I specifically chose big bead, medium bead, small bead, hard, soft, medium, and then the Berg, because I wanted to see which would be the best putter. And the Marvel just made more putts by a measurable margin. And so I didn't choose the Marvel. I chose the putter that went in the most, and it was the Marvel, but it wasn't even close. No, I'd say not even close. It might have been 10% more or something. But when you have that large number of simple items, the variance, that's a shocking variance. And it was large enough sample size where if I had done 10 times that amount, it would have been plus or minus 1 or 2% of that. I mean, that's a large enough number to predict the result. So I switched to the Marvel because it went in more. So what do I like about it the most? It goes in the most. That's it. I mean, as far as it sounds funny, but that's true.
I love the statistical approach. I think so many people approach putting as this sort of feel and confidence game, sort of like a more of a mental game than a, than a results based sort of thing. And the fact that you're taking it and like breaking it down and looking at, okay, well, how many putts did I make with these putters? Because whichever one goes in the most is the best one. And it may not even be the one that feels the best.
I putt with the Wizard for longer putts because it went in more. No, it's not that it doesn't feel the best. I didn't like it. I included it because Derek kept messaging me, and he's a real nice guy. And he's like, "We really want you to come on. Let me just send you some discs to try." I'm just a true story. He'll tell you. He's like, "Let me just send you some discs to try them. I want you to try these." And I was like, "No, I think I'm set on putters and blah blah. I'm going to putt the bird." Anyways, finally, I'm like, "Look, he's a really nice guy. Well, first off, he's persistent. I appreciate that. I'm a business person. I appreciate persistence. I'm not annoyed by it. I like that." And he also really wanted to work with me. He blew me up, stroked my ego a little bit by saying why he would love to, it'd be an honor to work with me, and all the things that would make me go, "Ooh, okay, that makes me feel good." So I started putting that disc, and I have never putted. It's a beadless putter. I've never putted a beadless putter in my life. I don't like beadless putters. I don't like the way they feel. I don't think I get a good release. I don't think they come out of my hand well. I don't like beadless putters. It's not relevant that I don't like beadless putters. It went in more. So who cares? Who cares that it does? Opinions don't matter if math trumps opinion if you interpret it correctly. And I interpreted the math correctly. My opinion is useless in this situation.
I think that's really interesting, and I would be amazed to hear if there's even a reasonable number of disc golfers out there that take a similar approach. And I would encourage people to comment below. How do you pick your putter? Because I think a lot of it comes down to feel.
You mean nerds? You mean fellow nerds?
Yeah. Fellow nerds, people who actually practice putting, how do you pick which one you use? I bet it's more about how it feels in the hand. And now I'm questioning my own advice, because when I talk to new players, or when I talk to players who are trying to pick a putter, I'll give them advice like, "Oh, see how it feels." But maybe it should be more like, get a stack of them and try them.
I don't. I also give the same advice. I give the same advice. Like, I think that matters.
Right.
Like, I'm in a different position. It's my job. I mean, I'm not going to give anybody the advice of doing 20,000 putts. Especially because, like, if you're a newer player, your mechanics aren't good anyway. So it's not even like if it doesn't matter what putter you putt with, that putter that gave you the worst results with slightly better mechanics is going to go in way more.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's the high hanging fruit. That's the last thing. You like fix your putt and learn how to putt first, and then do millions of them. Get good at putting, and then that's the last little tiny detail. But like the difference on the Pro Tour between being a good putter and a bad putter, Circle 1X is like 5%. Like, you go from a good putter to a mediocre putter at like 5 or 7% difference. I mean, it is razor thin.
Yeah.
The difference in putting between players on tour. Everybody on tour is good. Like, I'm not a good putter on tour. I'm a mediocre putter on tour. I'm average. I'm in the middle of the pack. Like, that makes me one of the top several hundred putters out of 15 million people. But on the tour, I'm very mediocre. I'm like just a guy who makes some and misses some, but everyone makes most.
We plugged a few of your things already, so this is a great opportunity for me to plug one of my things. We have a series we do on our channel called First Impressions, and we're soon going to be checking out Birdie Disc Golf Supply Company for the first time, including the Strike, the Ultra, and the Marvel. So we'll see what we can learn about it, and who knows, maybe it'll end up in one of our bags as well.
Yeah, give them a try. If they work for you, use them. Everyone makes good discs, What makes you choose a disc is totally up to you. Do you like their plastic better? Do you like their price better? Do they have cooler hot stamps? Do they fly better? Are they involved in some socially conscious effort that you support? Like, or do they pay a pro that you enjoy?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many different reasons to choose. I mean, everyone makes good discs. I mean, none of the big companies make crap discs. They all make good discs. So you choose them based on whatever metric, matters to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool stamp, cool swirls, right? Pretty discs fly further is what I hear a lot.
They do. My tour discs are all available at scottstokely.net with I mean, nothing could be prettier than having my face on the hot stamp. I'm like this, right?
There you go. It's right there. So we also have a series on our channel called Flight Numbers Don't Matter. And I remember listening to you talk about lightning discs having the first flight chart printed on a disc, but that flight chart not really having much explanation to how it worked, or how were you supposed to throw it, or how far was it going to go, and would it actually fly that way. So what are your opinions on flight charts, flight numbers? How much do they matter? How accurate are they?
Yes, that's easy. So the flight numbers that were also created by Innova are fantastic. Okay, just because they're imperfect doesn't mean they're fantastic. It's kind of like, oh, Western medicine gets things wrong, so Western medicine sucks. It's like, no, that's not true. It's imperfect. It's still the best thing out there.
Yeah.
The Innova flight numbers are great. So the first flight chart of any type that I'm aware of was on lightning discs. Lightning on their hot stamps put a little trajectory of how that disc would fly. The problem is number one, it didn't tell you if you were throwing it right-handed or left-handed backhand or sidearm. Number two, it didn't account for how fast or how slow or how much spin, or if the nose was up or if it was wobbling or if it was windy. And number three, they were just all wrong because Steve Howe was a nut. Like you would look at two different flight charts and one would be on an understable version of the other disc, but they'd be reversed. But he still gets credit for doing it first. He did he tried. The second flight chart ever was created by me.
Mm.
I made the flight chart for Discraft, and my flight chart sucked just a little bit less than Steve Howe's because my flight chart was every disc was a -3 to a +3, understable to overstable. I didn't take into account any of those different things. The only thing my flight chart did was if a person threw a reasonable power shot, a -2 would turn over more than a -1. I mean, they were consistent a little bit to each other. My flight charts were not good. The end of the flight charts are great. All right. I mean, like, of course, it's based on a certain speed, and of course, there's subjectivity involved, and of course, there's how much spin or how much less spin. Like, the flight charts don't necessarily tell you what the disc does. But what they do is they tell you what those discs do relative to another disc from the same manufacturer. So if you have a -2 disc from Innova, and then you buy a -1 disc from Innova, if you throw it at a reasonable speed, it will turn over less. The -1 will turn over less. And if it's a 4 fade, it'll fade harder than a 3 fade. So if you know what one end of a disc does, you know what the next disc does relative to that one, and it's great at that. Like, you have to have a starting baseline of what that's going to be. Now, if you, for instance, put the nose up on the disc, well, then it's going to be less understable early in its flight, probably, or rather, it's going to fade more. So that just means the -4 fades a different amount than a -4 does to me. But in both of our minds, a -4 does a thing that we can now compare future discs to. Now, when you go to a different manufacturer, it gets a little tricky because you have a different set of like a different starting point that might not be consistent with the EVA discs, but within that company, they should be consistent to one another. But flight charts are great. Flight charts are absolutely fantastic. They're the best thing in the sport. If there's a better way of doing it, I don't have one. I think they did excellent. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but they're good. Flight charts matter. You're wrong.
I'll be the first to admit that the name of our series is definitely meant to be a little controversial to get people in. But then I also try to approach it and like compare discs of different flight numbers and think about like, essentially show people why you shouldn't purely buy a disc based on its flight numbers. Because as you say, that point of reference from company A to company B is a totally different thing. And so how those discs are going to fly, they're not related.
So, do you want to know the best way to buy a golf disc?
Yes, definitely.
Go to your local pro shop and talk to the person at the pro shop. They are the experts, and they're also there in person. They know what the discs do on their shelves. They're in the business, but they're also there to help you, and they might actually run into you at league night. You could also have a conversation with them, and they can say to you, "Well, what happens when you throw your Roadrunner?" And you tell them, they go, "Oh, well, if that's happening, then you need something that's more of this." Um,
Yeah.
it's what they're there. It's why it's called a pro shop. It's not called a disc shop. It's called a pro shop because there's a pro there. The salesperson that works in the shop is someone who loves disc golf and knows disc golf. Like they might not be a pro on the at the tournaments, but they're professional disc golf experts. So that's the best thing to do. Go to your pro shop. Let them help you.
I love that. And I think they would give a lot of great advice about, plastics and what sort of options would be best. I do have a quick follow-up question on the flight numbers. When you're looking at a disc, for example, we're working on a video right now. We have one coming out soon about the T-Bird. And we throw a Champion, a Star, a G-Star, and a DX T-Bird. And those are all printed with the same flight numbers, but they fly so radically different. Do you think there's any better way to approach that in how they actually stamp the flight numbers? Should they be talking about how different one plastic should fly to the other to like lay that out for people who are shopping for a disc?
Yes, 100%, absolutely. The thing is, when discs come out of the mold, there's a lot of things that go into making discs. A lot of it is science, but a lot of it is art. That's why there's so few people that are good at it. And when a disc comes out of the mold, or it fills the mold, and it comes out of the mold, and it cools in the mold, and it cools in the mold, or it cools outside the mold after the disc is dropped, different things happen to it based on all sorts of factors. Everything from temperature of the room to humidity to how hot it was when it came out of the mold. In addition to all the different materials that were in that plastic, all the different additives. Because if you just use polyethylene or polypropylene or polyurethane, I think those are the three. Maybe I'm wrong, but you have a very standard type of plastic, but you'll add additives that make it grippier, make it more flexible, give it sparkles, whatever. Well, all of those will affect that disc shrinkage and doming up, etc., out of the mold.
Mm-hmm.
There's still going to be inconsistencies, but there's no doubt that one disc with this one plastic or one disc with this other plastic, even if they're coming out of the same mold, can wind up doming up or flattening up and flying differently. And yes, they are deserving of two different flight numbers. The fact that they're not is a mistake. Now, there's a lot of work involved because it takes more effort to kind of do that, but I think they should. Now, from run to run, there's also some variance because of the different things. You get the quote identical plastic from a different distributor. It's not quite identical maybe, and it comes out differently. Like I don't think it's the manufacturers need to be like testing every 100th disc or something stupid like that, and like, oh, it's changing because of the like. Okay, no, that's maybe a little too far,
Right?
but there's no doubt that, and I don't want to name the plastic because it'll sound like I'm picking on a manufacturer, but there's no doubt that there are discs that so radically different with those two plastics to not have different flight numbers. That's a myth. For sure. Again, no question. I think everyone would agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've come across as a challenge so often when I'm selling discs to somebody or just talking to them about them, and someone picks up one disc and another, and they go, "Oh, well, can I just throw this one instead?" And like,
right.
I want to explain to them why not, in a way that makes sense to them. At the same time, I want to sell them a disc, and so I'm always caught in this like sort of mixed emotions. How do I give you the best information about this product and how it's designed to fly, even though it says on it that it's going to fly like this other one? It isn't, and here's why. And to try and break that down.
No, I'll tell you right now, one of the discs in my bag that I absolutely love and cannot live without is from a company that doesn't pay me a dime. But I love the G-Star Destroyer. And to a lot of people, they don't like the G-Star, the plastic, whatever. For whatever reason, I'm like, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
The G-Star Destroyer, like, is the raddest distance driver, or no, not raddest, it was one of the raddest distance drivers ever. I love that disc. It's understable when I throw it hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to pop that thing with a lot of hyzer for a hyzer flip. And, there's destroyers that are overstable. I also, by the way, I used to carry a Calvin Heimberg destroyer in my bag as well for part of last season, the Halo Destroyer. And that disc was really overstable. Those were two completely different discs. They weren't even close.
Yeah.
And I love them both. But to say they're the same disc, or no, they are the same disc. They have the same flight numbers. And I'm giving this huge endorsement to Innova. They've never paid they don't pay me nothing. But I love the Destroyer. Like, shocking. Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. It's classic. I want to move on to some questions from our Discord server. I reached out to them. We have a loyal following of locals and fans from far away that we wanted to let them know we were talking to you and get some questions and see what they had to ask.
We also have a Discord server, scottstokely.net/Discord. And we have everything in there, from not just the teaching stuff to general discussion and fun stuff, but we have things on special needs disc golf. We have things on, I have a phone game that's in there. It's a phone training game app that is free. If you get on my Discord, it's free. You don't have to go to my Discord. You can go to the Google App Store, I believe, and download it and pay them money. Or you can get it free. I offer it. It's called Stokely CTP Champ. If you sign up on my Discord server, it's free. Bunch of cool stuff on there. So, go check it out.
All right. So from Floop42, what's the craziest shot that you've seen in person?
The most crazy shot I saw. That's a good question. I'm trying not to name one of mine, but it's kind of hard because I threw so much farther than everybody else for so many years that just come kind of by definition, some of that's the craziest shot. I'll go with my skins shot, and I humbly tried to find something else. I mean, the greatest shot of all time is James Conrad's, obviously. If mine's the greatest sidearm, I won't argue, but James Conrad's shots was for the World Championships, right? That's number one. But yeah, they're probably the skin.
Tell me about, I want to talk about both of those shots, but tell me first about your shot on the Big Money Skins match. What was the context around, for anyone who didn't see it, what was the context around, like, where you were at in the skins match, how much money's on the line, where's that money going? Because I know you donated a lot of it to charity as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's a documentary at notjustashot.com. It's a full documentary that someone made about that shot, about everything leading up to the shot. It's the best piece of disc golf content in the world, I think. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I had nothing to do with it. It was all done by Ken Drew Mueller. He's a filmmaker that put this whole thing together. It's so good. Notjustashot.com. No, but the short of it was in the middle of 2 years ago, I was invited to be part of the largest skins match in the history of disc golf. And they invited me to be out there. Maybe because I brought an older audience and I had a social media following, because they brought me out with Calvin Heinberg, Simon Lizotte, and Brody Smith. Ironically, the weekend before the Big Money Skins match, Simon just sought the course record at Jonesboro. Calvin won Jonesboro, and at the tournament immediately following Dynamic Discs Open, Brody finished third. So they brought out those three and the old guy. And it was $12,000 in skins money, and I told Dave McCormick, the tournament director, one of the directors, him and Philip Samuels. Philip Samuels owns the property, Eagles Crossing, and I just told him ahead of time. I said, I'll play, but any skins money I win is going to go to an autism organization. I donate all my prize money from all the tournaments I play to local autism organizations or developing disc golf. I just name it whatever. For the last 2 years, I've named some type of organization before the tournament. Whatever I win, the money's going there. And so Dave's like, you don't have to do this. It's a skins match. It's not a tournament. I'm like, no, that's okay. I'll do I want to do that. So I'll donate my skins money. And then the funny story is that a couple weeks before the event, Dave messaged me and he says, hey, we're doing a crowdfunding thing to have a bonus money for whoever wins the most skins. And it's going to be thousands of dollars. It's going to be really cool. But it's first place take all. And I said, cool. And I go, you'll donate that to charity if I win that? Like, not really thinking I'm going to win, right? Just going, okay, well, just If I win, if I happen to get the most skins, let's include that. And Dave was like, he's like, Scott, you got to keep some money because I give everything away. I'm not rich. I don't have a trust fund. I never won the lottery. I just like giving my money away. And he's like, he goes, promise me if you win the skins match, you'll at least keep the bonus money. He's like, promise me. And I'm like, fine. Okay. If I happen to win the most skins, I'll keep, but I'm giving away the skins money. He's like, that's fine. Yeah. And that's what happened. We went out to the event. I ended up winning a couple skins early. You know, Simon won on hole 5. And then we started pushing, and we pushed all the way up to hole 14. And by hole 14, there was $5,500 in skins money had built up. But at this point, there were so many skins on the line. If anybody or whoever wins the next hole will win the bonus money, which was like $9,000.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so basically, Brody threw first, went out of bounds. I threw a shot out into the fairway. No chance of birdie. It's a par 4. Never been birdied in tournament play. No chance of birdieing from where I was because you had to be left to go all the way left around the trees to even have a shot. It's a really hard hole, even if you had a perfect drive. I was off to the right. I was pinched off, but I was in a great position for an easy par. I could have pitched around, laid it up. So in a tournament, I was in a good spot. Simon crushes it way past mine, but right on the left side of the fairway with a shot to get up and down. Hard shot, but had a shot. And then Calvin threw out of bounds, so it was down to Simon and I, me and Simon, right? And I had to go first, and I talked about all this in this documentary. It's a really good documentary, but you know, the one of my life's lessons that I've learned over the years is that you don't get many opportunities, right? I mean, opportunities don't come by every day to do something great or to have something good happen in your life or to do something big. And so when they happen, you have to go after them. It doesn't mean you succeed just because you jump on an opportunity. You can fail. In fact, failing's part of life, but you automatically fail if you don't go after the opportunities. And so I was in a position where I had a chance to birdie this hole to win the skins. And so I found about a 4-foot gap. It was 375 feet ish. I'm guessing. Simon said 400 feet. I don't think it was that far, but there was a 4-foot wide gap, but I had to go straight through the middle of the forest to get there. It's not a shot. I mean, 0 people, like nobody's throwing that shot in a tournament. No one would ever play that way. But I didn't want to pitch out, take a par, and hope Simon doesn't birdie. And one of the things that popped into my head was, if I throw this shot through the woods and it misses, which it's probably going to, I'm a moron. I've now instant guaranteed bogey, and I've handed the skins to Simon. Everybody thinks I'm stupid, and they go, "Why? That's why they shouldn't have brought him. They should have had Paul or Ricky." Like, you know, that was the risk. The risk was like utter and total embarrassment at me doing this, and but that's what you do. You have to take the opportunity. So I just said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take that shot. I'm going to throw it through this stupid little impossible gap. And then I get lined up to my shot, and I'm like, oh, I can't quite get the angle I want from here. I need to have the disc rising, so I need to drop down to a knee. And now I'm 375 feet out, slightly uphill from a knee. But that's the way that this was going to rise, because I couldn't throw out the hole. I had to Anheuser it and with the nose up so it would pass the gap and then fade. It was extremely technical shot. You know, like the rest is history. I nailed the shot, and the funny thing is it was extremely emotional to me. I cried at the award ceremony, a lot, and it's not because I won. It's not because of the money I gave away. I ended up making $5,500 in skins money. I had an anonymous donor that matched it, so I actually wrote not a check. I sent $11,000 to Hope for Autism. But the thing that meant so much to me was that all my years playing when I was really good. I mean, I might still be pretty good now, but I used to be real good when I was, obviously, I'm 50 something years old. Um, and I had all these the most spectacular, amazing shots that everybody that was there talks about to this day. None of them are out there on video. Some of them were on video and the videos have disappeared. A
Yeah.
number of them. But it's like, in my mind, it's like I did all these things that nobody could do with a golf disc. Nobody in the world but me could do with a golf disc. And eventually everybody's going to die. And these shots are going to be forgotten. And it's like, I'm not going to be part of our sports history. The things I could do won't be remembered. And so when I threw that shot, as soon as it left my hand, I knew I made it. And I turned around, and the first thing I see is everybody's got their cell phones, GK Pro, couple camera people. And it just hit me. I went, one of my shots is now part of our sports history. I don't want to be forgotten in our sport. This is a common thing when you get older, and probably to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be remembered. I want to have made. But when I saw that on footage, I went, oh my God, one of my shots is going to be in the compilation highlight reel forever. And that just meant so much to me. It represented a career of throwing those shots that I got one on film now. And that's why it was so important to me. Now, the funny part, I'll take the mood back up a little bit. The funniest part was, my first thought was, oh my God, one of my shots is going to be on camera. It's going to be part of the sports history. And because I was like 15 or 20 feet, about 20 feet away or something from the basket, my immediate next thought was, God, Scott, if you missed this putt, that's the shot everyone's going to remember. And I was like, really? Really? Our brains are assholes.
Right.
Like, I got like 5 seconds to actually like have this moment before my brain's like, now you're probably going to screw it up.
Well, then maybe that's what made it easier for James Conrad, is he just threw it into the basket. He didn't have to worry about tapping it in.
You'd have to make a putt, right? Yeah. So, anyways,
He just has to go to a playoff.
I told it short story. But the documentary is telling the whole story that starts from the early days of the sport, all the things in my life that led up to this point, my problems I've had. I mean, it's so good. It's such a good story. I didn't ruin any of it with that story. I'm telling you, this documentary, notjustashot.com, it's perfect.
It sounds amazing, and I'm amazed that I haven't heard of it, or maybe I have and I just didn't see it, but I'm going to have to check it out, and will, of course, include a link in the video description.
That'd be awesome.
Just a follow-up then to that, we talked obviously about your amazing shot at the skins match, but for the holy shot, as it has, of course, been called, James Conrad's shot at the 2021 World Championship, if I'm not mistaken. Were you there for that shot? Were you watching it on DGN? How do you recall the holy shot?
No, I watched it live. I was sitting in a hotel room, and this is the first time I paid for Disc Golf Network that day.
Yeah.
I was traveling around the country. I was focusing on tournaments. I remember, like I didn't know I was going to be on the pro tour until the DDO. Right in 2021. So I wasn't like, I knew, I mean, I know half the people on tour, like I'm fan, but it's very passive. I'm watching post-production at times, and I'm focusing on teaching and other stuff. I had other things,
Yeah.
But I was like, I downloaded that one. I watched the final, just the last 9 holes of that round. And I jumped onto the bed and started jumping up and down on my bed. Because I just this sport's everything to me. It's my life, and I just watched the greatest shot in the history of the game.
Yeah,
and I love. By the way, I've had so many people, especially when we're in person. Maybe they're buttering up to me. They're like, well, that shot meant more. But they've many people have said they thought my shot was the greatest shot because it was for like $14,000 or $15,000. But it was that skill shot. Like, how many people are going to drop to a knee, choose to throw through the 4-foot gap, risking everything, execute the 375-foot sidearm, like skill-wise, whatever. I correct them every time. It's like, you cannot compare anything I've ever done on the course to what James Conrad did, because it's freaking world championships.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, I don't think, in my opinion, there's not another shot in the conversation. Like it's James Conrad's shot and then a whole bunch of other cool shots that you can go ahead and debate at the bar.
Yeah.
But you don't debate number one.
No.
Like that's stupid. It's like it was the best. And James was a great guy, and it was so good for the sport. And it was during, like, it was the timing of it was perfect. Everything about it, perfect in every single way. You know, even James Conrad laying up that shot a couple holes before that, like, oh, is he going to be second guessing that the rest of his life? Well, guess what? Nope. As a matter of fact, he's not. Like, but even that added to the drama because remember, James was stringing him. Like everybody else was kind of falling by the wayside, and James was like him and Paul were like, Paul didn't hand it over.
Yeah.
Paul didn't take his foot off the gas. Paul won that tournament. It just happened that Conrad won it more.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, watching that live, you just knew that it was such a historically significant shot. Like I remember watching it live. I was sitting on the couch with my wife. She's not as into disc golf as I am. She's kind of half watching, and I like almost fell off the couch. I was just like, and I don't react like that to sporting events, to stuff like that. I just didn't know what to do with myself. It was incredible.
No, it was the best. It was the best. It was the best moment in the history of disc golf. It was the best. It was the best everything.
Couple other quick questions from our Discord server again. Sean Williams asks, how do you avoid injuries after 40 or just in general?
All right, so a couple things. The first is, and I'm only going to say this because I'm asked, do you have to take care of your body? You just do. I mean, look, if you're struggling with your weight, you're putting more strain on your body. Now, it's 2023, so I have to add the part where it means doesn't mean you're not beautiful or that you're less of a person or, whatever things you're supposed to say, in the modern era. But I teach disc golf for a living, and as a disc golf coach, the less good shape you're in, the more susceptible you are to injuries. That's going to come first.
Sure.
By the way, it doesn't apply when you're, I'm sorry, it doesn't apply when you're 20. You can get away with anything when you're 20. When you're 30, you can kind of get away with anything, but when you get older, you can't. So I've had to basically trade in a lot of the things I want to eat. I go to the gym every 3 days for 2 hours, and I work out really hard to put my body in a position where it can handle the strain because I'm older and I have to. It sucks. I hate working out. I'd never go to the gym and think, God, this is awesome. It's like, no, it sucks. I hate it. But it's way better than being injured or not playing well. But the second thing is just good mechanics. Like throwing properly is the lowest impact you can do on your body when you play disc golf. All right, I'll give you just like one example of this, right? Like all these different moving parts, different hinges, right? You might call them joints. I would call them hinges because I think of us as machines when I teach. We're machines. We're not people. We're just machines. We're machines with a brain, but we're just machines. And different hinges can move in a different range of motion, right? So that hinge might be able to move anywhere out here. But when it's here, it much more fluidly moves. It much more smoothly moves. It also almost always, when it moves in this range of motion where it's kind of meant to move, it is where the bone, the muscle, the ligament, the tendons, where everything's kind of lined up properly. And if that hinge moves in that there, it's going to be the lowest impact possible, right? Think about it like a machine where you have a moving part, and I'm exaggerating, right? Because we're probably talking about nanometers with like machinery, but metaphorically, that machine can move out here, right? But this is where it's calibrated. If it's calibrated here, mechanical parts will just go forever. They don't get hot, They don't grind, there's no friction, they don't wear out, they don't break. They're also most efficient and strongest and use the least amount of energy. They can move out here, but all those things I just mentioned are less. They grind, they pull, they impinge, they're not as strong, they break down, they get hot, they wear out, there's friction. We're just the exact same way. So you need to throw in a way where all these different moving parts are calibrated, and when they are, they can kind of move forever, right? When they get out of calibration, meaning when you're throwing with your body out of position, you are putting strain on that joint. And the thing about that hinge is it doesn't usually break when it's out of whack once. It's most often a chronic thing. Occasionally you get out of whack and, oh, I hurt myself. But that's not the most common disc golf injury. It's the most common injury is not I threw, oh, that was bad, I need to go. Like that, don't get me wrong, that can happen in any sport. But the more common disc golf injury is chronic injury from throwing improperly, where you're just irritating, you're wearing, there's inflammation, you're pulling, you're getting tendonitis, you get like that's the stuff that happens in disc golf that is significantly reduced by throwing properly. And I'm just going to plug my online class, because my online class is all about not just that specific form you're supposed to do, but it's about finding the calibration or calibrating your body so mechanically it looks mechanically your body's calibrated properly for the lowest impact. By the way, here's the best part of all, though. This is the neatest part about our game, is that if the safest, if there were two ways of throwing, if there was one way which flew the farthest to generate the most power, but it was hard on your body and even hurt, possibly caused injuries, but there was a second way that was the lowest impact and the least amount of strain and would give you longevity, you know which one I would teach? I would teach this one. Okay, nobody is taking my class because they want to not be sore after they play. Everybody takes my classes because they want to throw farther, they want to score better, they want to beat their buddy, they want to win the tournament, they want to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
I would teach the throw that hurt. And then I would just say as a disclaimer, hey, you're playing a sport. It's going to hurt. Suck it up. Or maybe it doesn't hurt today, but when you get older, you're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
Deal with it. You're playing a sport. Sports are hard. It's a complete coincidence that I don't have to do that, because it turns out that all the ways that your body's calibrated always correlate with how your body is strongest and how you can replicate the motion consistently. So it turns out the lowest impact on your body is also the best way to score well. And that's, like I said, that's a coincidence, but it's a pretty darn neat one for us.
A quick kind of fun question for you. We're getting into that sort of miscellaneous category. We did a video a couple of years ago with Chris Dickerson down in Tennessee. And while we were there, I asked him, what would he do if he wasn't a professional disc golfer? And he said he would have been a car mechanic. So if somehow your life didn't kind of follow disc golf so closely, what would you do for a career?
I would be an entrepreneur. I cannot work for anybody else. I've tried it. It's just, it doesn't fit for me. I can't be happy.
Yeah.
Let me go big picture for a second here. This is more philosophical, but I think the key to being happy is to find your own path in life, independent of what anybody teaches you, independent of what your parents, your siblings, your spouse, your church, TV, radio, whatever, books, like find what your own path is that you want to do. But there's not a right or a wrong path for you, right? So I don't think I'm like superior or better than other people simply because I can't work for anybody else and I have to be free. There are plenty of people that are like, yeah, that comes with a lot of stress and anxiety. And what I like is the opposite. I like to know a paycheck's coming. And when I leave work at 5 o'clock, I can forget about work till the next day because I don't give a shit about my work. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just the opposite. Like, I have to be free. I have to be in control of my life. I can't be told where to be, when, what state, what country to be in. Like, I just can't. The trade-off for that is I work more than anyone else I know, and I never leave work behind. So with that same idea, I would be doing something where I was free, where I was traveling. I would be working remotely in the world doing something for myself. There's so many different ways. Yeah, like I have to, the way I mean, everything I'm doing right now, like the freedom to travel, to do everything, everything's on purpose. Like I didn't fall into any of this. This was a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, things change as they go and they evolve, but um, I created everything I do with the sole purpose of being able to be free and to travel. So I have partnerships with all these companies that you mentioned earlier, all these businesses. Every single one of them is a partnership because I have someone doing distribution, I have someone doing shipping, I have someone doing development, I have a game
Yeah.
company, blah blah. So it's all of it is on purpose. So if it wasn't disc golf, it would be something else. I would be creating businesses that I can run from my phone anywhere. That way, in a lot of these businesses, I mean, I take a far smaller percentage than I would have if I was a partner and I was sitting in the office next to the person. Like, I'll take less money because I
Yeah.
won't do that part of the job that involves me sitting behind a desk. So, but even it's not even a coincidence. The fact that I do clinics, I'm traveling around the country doing clinics and seminars, and then after the beginning of the year, I'll be visiting 200 pro shops between February and April to promote a new product I'm going to launch that I can't talk about. But I'm going to visit 200 pro shops. But it's not a coincidence that I've set up all of my businesses and promotions in a way where I travel and I get to set every single date myself. I want to be here on this day. I want to be there on that day. I don't want to work that day. So
Yeah.
I do that with any business. It would be that. I don't care if I was what I'm doing. I would have to be free.
Where do you see yourself in disc golf in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I have this new business disc golf thing that is going to be happening. I'm going to be announcing it somewhere around the first of the year, maybe right a little bit before, maybe a little after. But the new business is starting. That's going to be the biggest thing I've ever done in disc golf. I will still be traveling, but I would say the biggest thing I'll be doing in 5 to 10 years is trying to win Open Pro Worlds. Now I'm going to be I'm going to be 1,000 rated MP60 player. That's one of my long-term goals.
Nice.
My focus, I think, and I can't predict the future, but I believe my focus for the rest of my life will be growing disc golf in developing countries. I want disc golf in Africa and Southeast Asia and South America. And that's where I'll be putting my time into. And a big reason, I don't want any of my friends, especially my friends in the South who are really patriotic. I don't want you to think I'm abandoning America. It has nothing to do with that. Don't misunderstand. It's just I can't do anything to make disc golf better in America. What am I going to do? Teach a class? Teach a few people? Like that is a drop in the bucket. It's because America's disc golf is crushing. What I want to do is I want to promote disc golf in places where I can make a massive difference. And I can. I can make a massive difference in Africa and Southeast Asia. I have a plan which I can't. It's another thing I can't announce yet. But the thing I'm trying to do, that I'm trying to put together, is going to change the world. Like it is that I'm so much larger than anything I've been doing. Are the things I'm working on right now and working towards. And if I do them, it's going to be it's a global game changer for the sport. And you'll hear about it. Everybody's going to hear about it because I'm going to be rallying people behind us. And hopefully we'll have a lot of people out there behind what I'm doing, but it's going to be, yeah, it's a whole different level than anything that's being done right now. So I'm fingers crossed. I'll do it. I'll make it work.
Can't wait to find out what those things are. We will stay tuned to see exactly what's going on in the Scott Stokely universe. For anybody out there who's following along Scott's story, you can follow him on Facebook, YouTube, scottstokely.net. I'm sure you're on other stuff. You're on Instagram as well?
Yeah, Instagram, MySpace, OnlyFans, whatever. You can find me anywhere.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Bye.
Everyone, you can follow Scott on Facebook, YouTube, scottstokely.net. Attend a seminar, grab a disc, he'll sign it for you. We'll include all those links below. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a comment below who we should interview next. This has been All Six Sides, and for Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.